Okay, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us. We're really excited to have you here to hear the identity transformation journeys of two of our special customers, VSP and Cisco. My name's Gretchen Wickman. I'm a partner with the Edgile Wipro team. For those of you that don't know, Edgile is a cybersecurity consulting firm that was acquired by Wipro almost 2 years ago. And so we're excited to be part of that larger family now. With me, and I'm a partner at Edgile, and I run the identity practice, and I also lead up our SailPoint relationship. So thank you guys again for coming. Ashish, you want to do a quick intro?
So, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Ashish. I head the digital identity practice globally for Wipro. And as Gretchen mentioned, we acquired Edgile largely to strengthen our consulting arm. We do identity from an end-to-end perspective. I bring 2+ decades of identity experience to the table, and I've seen identity solutions change over time, and happy to host two of our esteemed customers here. So over to you, Chris.
Hello, everyone. My name is Chris Eckert. I'm the Identity and Access Management Manager at VSP Vision, and I'm excited here to kind of talk about our identity journey. We've been a SailPoint customer, predominantly Identity Now customer for the last several years. And over the last several months and within the last year, we've really been able to modernize and transform our identity program. And I'm excited to kind of talk to the panel today and as other customers to tell us our story.
Hey, everyone. Thanks for coming here. This is Dilip from Cisco. I lead the identity governance implementation at Cisco. So we started with SailPoint like 3+ years ago, and then happy to share our journey with our experiences with SailPoint so far.
Thank you. Ashish?
So with that, Dilip, if you would like to talk about, why Cisco thought about transforming identity and your current landscape, and also, why did you choose a platform, a next-gen platform like SailPoint, right? Yeah. So if you can elaborate.
Yeah, I think the story starts in 2019. 2019-ish, like we were. I'll briefly talk about what the current state in 2019, and then we'll talk about like how did we choose, and then how did we join. So 2019, like we had multiple homegrown, purpose-built identity management applications. We had an homegrown enterprise solution, and then we also had like solutions for supply chain, solution for finance, engineering, so on and so forth, right? And then at the same time, of course, and these are all like, each of them are ages from 5 to 15 years. So it comes with their own technical depth, but some of them are like purpose-built for specific use cases to solve specific problems in a specific business unit at some point of time in the whole journey, right? So 2019-ish, there's a huge wave of cloud transformation, like our business apps are moving to cloud. So we had a choice there, either I invest more on these homegrown apps. Maybe even if I invest on this homegrown apps, they can only take me to somewhere, right? So it's not going to take us to the full journey where we really want to go. So considering that most of our workload is going to cloud, at the same time, for example, like one good example is our HR was moving to Workday. Most of our deal to order is going to Salesforce, so on and so forth. So we thought like, hey, we had choice there, either we go and buy something which is a leader in the market and consolidate all these homegrown apps. So that was kind of one of the reasons. And of course, there's also a factor of de-risking, like some of our IP was sitting outside of US, in terms of the source code of some of those homegrown apps. So we want to de-risk that dependency on the IP sitting outside of US. So that was one of the factors, like we had to really make a call much faster that we pick a solution. So we looked at, and also one more factor is like at Cisco, Cisco is also in the identity business. So one key decision what we made is like, if you're not selling something, let's not build something. So that was also a reason why we thought like, let's go and find a market leader in this, specifically in the IGS space, right? So we were looking at multiple top vendors at the time. And considering the use case, what we had is like, IGS was not new to Cisco. Like we've been doing IGA practice at Cisco 20 years, like I'm talking about 2020 time, right? So we've been doing for the decade. So bringing those models and processes to a SaaS, we felt like, again, like the decision is like, hey, should we go on a SaaS? Should we go on a more of a IIQ kind of a model, right? So, so we looked at considering our use case, what we had, and the complexity of, or the variety of use cases what we had. We felt like taking those use cases to SaaS is going to be a really big challenge for us because and then we thought like, hey, let's go to IIQ with a plan to go to a more of a SaaS-based solution in the future. So that's kind of how we ended up, number one, like deciding, hey, we have to invest more on a cold product, and B, start with something like IIQ with a journey that I think like, I mean, IIQ is not our, we know it's not our final destination, it's a first step with a plan to move to SaaS in the future.
Thank you. Chris, would you want to elaborate?
Yeah, we took a slightly different journey, mainly through mergers and acquisitions. We had to kind of rapidly scale and be able to centralize our identity and access management services. Through our acquisitions, we've acquired companies of all sizes, some that had very robust policies, practices, things in place that made the identity program helpful, and then others had nothing. They were a smaller, kind of a smaller company and had very immature practices and policies and procedures, and even technologies. So we ended up leaning into Identity Now as a vehicle to centralize our IAM services and to really improve the end user experiences for all of our customers. And it's been really successful for us in helping, educate the business on why recertification campaigns matter, why entitlements need to have those business-friendly descriptions that we've talked about that were mentioned this morning in the keynote. And for me, it's been really a great success in leveraging the business practices, having an identity strategy with the support of Edgile and other partners to help kind of voice the concerns and how we want to improve our security through identity. So for us, we found that we could lean in very heavily into Identity Now. And with a great skill of team members, we've been able to kind of really accelerate our program. And I'm excited, as probably most of you are, with a lot of the releases that came out this morning. And I'm excited to kind of continue the journey for sure.
Thank you.
Awesome. Getting started. We all know it's hard to get started on these programs and they cost some money. So would love to hear how you guys got started. How did you get stakeholder and budget approval? Delete.
Yeah, interesting question. I think that's the most difficult part of getting started, right? So, so I think in short, I would say like we did build a business use case. At that time, we kind of said, hey, this is the current landscape of all these apps. Some of them are homegrown. Some of them are also even talking about like in 2010, like 2020, we had a homegrown and a combination of cold products. So we do know what is the cost to run those apps, including your infrastructure, your license, your people cost, et cetera, et cetera. So what we did is like, we laid down the cost, hey, what is going to run these for next 5 years? And then we also laid down a cost, hey, what is going to take to implement a new product like SailPoint and deploy it and build it and operate it. So the story is like, hey, 5+ years, we are going to be net neutral in terms of our cost. So that's the first thing. That's the first selling point, at least like before we go to our CEO for us to get us approved, like, hey, show us the total cost of this program for 5 years. And then we also showed that, hey, on top of that, on top of being being net neutral, what is the value you're going to bring? So what are some of the gaps that we're going to close, right? So I think that's kind of helped us in building that the picture for our executives to get this program approved and sponsored. I think the rest is, from there, it's more of a journey we took from there, yeah.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah, for me, I had to really kind of put a different type of hat on. I had to communicate to our executive team that there's a lot of risk associated with identity and that security has to be baked into the entitlements, has to be baked into what your business processes are and into your identity fabric. And for us, we leveraged a lot of our audit findings. Our CISO and our executive audit committee was routinely hitting us with different regulatory, hey, you have a gap here, you're not doing a recertification. And so we had to really look at a way to re-educate the people and our customers and our executive team that you're not going to get an ROI from a security product, but you can get business gains and security reduction through a tool and capability like Identity Now. And so for us, when we were looking and selecting our products, we looked at a product that would allow us to scale and automate at the same time. So instead of me asking the question, I need additional headcount right out the gate, I got to solve all these problems, we kind of framed it in a different way and looked at it and said, look, we can solve these problems now, we can close these audit findings right now, and we can show the value of having a strategic platform that is more future-proof. And it's been super helpful for us, enabling the business to get more value out of closing those audit findings, because they don't want to talk about those things. They've been sitting sometimes very long. So we kind of turn it around and use it as an opportunity to get that executive buy-in. And once we kind of told that story, they fell in line and were excited to see how our identity journey was going to unfold. And I'm happy to report a lot of our metrics now have really shown that the investment in solving those audit findings and doing the hard work has made it a lot better for the business.
Thank you. So, Dilip, I would like to, get a little deeper, with knowing that Cisco has a very complex environment, legacy, homegrown solution to, identity IQ, and then, hundreds of applications, right? If you can talk about some of the challenges, I know you would have faced tons, but you can talk about some top 2-3 challenges, and then, certain pitfalls that we all should avoid, right? That will be very helpful.
Yeah, I think definitely. I think so I'm looking at the room. I have some of my team members here in the room, who are part of that whole journey, exciting journey we had, the roller coaster journey, right? So, so first of all, I think, as I said, for my stakeholders, whether my app owners or my SOX auditors, or maybe not only just the audit community or app owners or executives, right? Governance is not a new practice at Cisco when we started the journeys. Look, the expectation was very high. So that was the big first thing. What we realized is the bar is very high, and now we're talking. And when we brought in SailPoint IIQ, I'm being very specific about the IIQ, right? Because you guys can resonate we're using IIQ. The reason why I'm saying that. So user experience was the first thing, and of course, that was kind of a surprise, because the people got used to the way how they get the information in the legacy tools or homegrown tools, because they've been using that for years. They were tuned to they know how to go and find the information what they need, how to quickly come out of that. And then when we brought them into IIQ, it was a different experience. So I would say I think that all falls under change management. But how do we drive the change management across the organization of size of Cisco scale is a big challenge. Right, so number one, that's what we faced, and number two is some of the capabilities, what we were really drawing a hard line, saying that hey, some things we don't want to really customize IAQ, because we know we're not going to stay in IAQ for a long time. We don't want to end up customizing the heck out of it. So we said, hey, there's certain things we're not going to change, whatever it might take, right? So I think that kind of become a huge stake there from adoption standpoint. That really, we really have to, I don't know what's the right word. So I know my stakeholders are not really happy with what they're getting out of IAQ, because they are able to rationalize hey, we used to get this there that used to make sense for the culture or environment what we had Cisco, but we don't see that here. So that the whole usability was a challenge, and then of course the biggest challenge for me was. When we were in homegrown, the way how we used to onboard applications was more of a pull model. That means I used to have the APIs, wherein you as an app owner will come and subscribe to the APIs, and then you start feeding your entitlement, provisioning, so on and so forth. But in SailPoint's world, you always have to build a connector from SailPoint into an application. So that means there's a lot of engineering work involved on the IAM team than on the application teams. So that all of a sudden we became the bottleneck for the for the velocity that we need to really bring on the application. So that so number one, my team is not really prepared in terms of our scale, what we had. We have a team of 10 people. When we're talking about a backlog of I think I'm talking about close to so we have 240 or 250 application backlog. Right? I mean, that is, I'm only talking about a greenfield, the brand new applications, right? Not even talking about a migration application. So So that was like, and the minute I started showing my backlog to my stakeholders, like we're talking about a backlog of applications for 2+ years or 3+ years. I can't really commit anything for them, right? So that really put us in a really tricky situation. Like come end of year 2, I mean, we did have some wins. Like for example, like we started with something small, like we did deploy our account provisioning. We kind of brought some of those capabilities. We did have some quick wins, but when it actually came to application onboarding, that became a big challenge for us. Like that's where like the biggest challenge is like there's a question on the whole the program. Like it came to say, hey, are we really getting a value out of this? Because the stakeholder expectation was so high that they want to see a velocity of adoption that we're really not able to scale with the team what we had. So that was a big challenge. At least like year 2 was a big challenge for me because it came to a stage where if I can't really show them value coming out of it, it came to a stage like the program might be shut down, right? So I think that was an unexpected, like we didn't really anticipate that at the beginning of the journey, but like I think that's some of the lessons what we learned as we are going through this. And then I think year 3, we were able to, maybe when we talk more, we'll talk about how are we trying to solve the problems. But yes, I think in short, experience and how can you, and the experience around usability, experience around onboarding and adoption is really big things that we struggled. And I think we're trying to figure out how do we come out of this. Yeah.
No, I appreciate that, and we have seen that adoption is one of the key challenges across the industry, and that's what happens. Once you're done with your foundation, and then everybody looks at, what next? How can I spread the wings and integrate more and more applications with SailPoint, right? And that's where I think if you can talk a little bit more on how we are trying to solve that problem. We are partnering with you to bring in an accelerator and onboard these hundreds of applications in more factory-based model, right? So if you can elaborate a little bit on that.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a good question. See, and this is really a sticky point, and at the same time, I was really passionate about this topic. Like, I mean, I'm not again like. Folks in the room, like it's not a sales pitch, like this is a real problem, like that I'm sure everyone, you guys who are practicing identity will go through this, right? So as I said, like say, we have a huge backlog, and as long as I'm not giving a committed roadmap for my app owners, company like Cisco is heavily engineering company, like if I don't give them a problem, they go and solve the problem by themselves, right? So come 6 months, like you will figure out if someone is running their own, you'll not be surprised. Like that's true. Like that's how it works, right? We're not an insurance company. We're not a bank, right? We're an IT company. So I need to quickly figure out a way. How do I show progress? How do I onboard these applications rapidly? So what we did is like, the only way is like when I go back and look about what was working in the past in my old homegrown apps versus SailPoint. The biggest problem is in order to onboard your application to SailPoint, we have to have a SailPoint developer team involved there to gather the requirements. It's a heavy hand-holding, like understanding, capturing the requirements, converting that into more of an integration patterns, driving the change management, so on and so forth. So it's a heavily SailPoint driven or IAM-driven activity. So what we're trying to see, like how can we make it more of a self-service? How can we reduce the load on my team and make it more of a bring more collaboration from the app teams, like make app teams part of that whole onboarding process. So I was trying to look at, hey, if I'm moving my workload from my data center to AWS, right? Am I really always working with AWS? The answer is no, right? So I expect that there's an engineer in my team who knows AWS, like how to. Yeah. So similarly, like how do I bring that knowledge in the app teams to some level that they know, like the minute I talk about account aggregation, the minute I say, hey, what is your group aggregation? There goes, it's a Greek and Latin, right? So that's where the conversation ends. So how do I talk to my app teams in a non-SailPoint language that is specific, and then make it very generic? Let them figure out how can I teach them to collect the requirements? How can I teach them to figure out what is the right connector they can potentially be using? So these are some of the challenges what we are trying to address. So first thing what we did is like, especially on the engineering side, most of our engineering infrastructure access is governed through a group-based integration. So what we said is like, hey, let's deploy a group-based solution and then enable a complete self-service. You create your own groups, and then you come to a screen and say, hey, I want these groups to be managed by SailPoint, right? So everything is a self-service. Boom, like without talking to anyone, my team even today, like we did deploy this solution like 6 months ago. And that's where we started working with Wipro on the IMC, that Identity Management Central, right? So we just went live with that capability that really helped us. Like in last 6 plus months, like we onboarded around like 150 plus applications, completely self-service, with a minimal consultation from my team. Like yes, we do just provide a gatekeeping kind of a thing there, but like there's clear documentation on how to onboard those applications using a group-based integration, right? So now, as phase 2, what we're also working is like, how do I enhance that to more of a connector-based application? So either you're using a JDBC or REST API. So the standard patterns we said we're going to support. Either you're using an out-of-box, a REST API, or a JDBC, right? Or a web service kind of a thing, right? So these are the standard patterns what we're going to support. And we're going to build this module or a self-service onboarding module through IMC. The expectation is like an app owner comes there, fill those forms, and they figure out they can test their connector. At least they come to stage. And that's where my team will be involved to verify, yes, did they do everything right? Or help them in maybe like if some capabilities are missing, maybe do some quick fine-tuning of that, write some rules or extra things that cannot be done out of box, and just move them to production. So that's the state what we're working towards. Hopefully, like we'll be going live in fact, like we're doing a pilot for that. We didn't really announce that across the organization. We're doing a pilot with some of our friendly app teams, getting some more feedback from them. I think that's a journey what we're seeing will help us in accelerating. At least like the mantra is like, hey, 2x of velocity with half of the capacity. That's the mantra we're trying to achieve. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks. And, Dilip talked about Identity Management Center. That's, a toolkit that we have developed in-house, knowing the space for last 20 years and seen this problem over and over again, right? So that's something that we have built, which is an add-on to SailPoint, largely to help, onboard at a much higher pace, right? With that, Chris, I would like to hear your views on the challenges that you faced in your organization.
Yeah, we took a slightly different approach. We are driving. We're a little bit behind Cisco in that sense of kind of onboarding the applications, and we've been really kind of working with the app teams directly to understand their requirements and actually work with the app teams. There are a lot more friendlier groups. There are others that are a little bit less friendly to work with. And we've worked to understand their requirements and improve the overall process. One of our largest groups is our customer service representatives that answer the phones, and they need very specific, very limited access, but there's such a high rate of turnover, and they need to be able to get this access on day one. And so what we've done is really work to understand how does that access need to be provisioned using Identity Now. We've been able to automate the life cycle as well as the kind of the birthright foundation of that access, which has made our customer service managers really, really happy, because the day that they're starting, they're not waiting hours, maybe a day or two to be able to hit the ground running. They're able to hit the ground running day one, hour one. And that's really, really helpful. And once they see that, they've really kind of they want to know more. They want to know how to accelerate their program. And we've actually been able to kindle a type of growth organically with our application owners. And for us, it's been super helpful. Identity Now has a wonderful library of connectors, and we've been able to leverage a lot of the capabilities, including workflows and forms within Identity Now. And where we can't natively connect, or where we're trying to understand a business process, we're able to enable the business to see that data and actually make decisions. And it's been really helpful for the business to be able to understand that. So one of the things that we've kind of really learned is don't refactor a bad business practice. So what we've been able to do is partner with them to understand what are their challenges, how are their requirements really needing to be worked, and we've been able to solution it from the ground, greenfield, which has made our lives a lot easier. Because oftentimes, if you refactor, you'll spend a lot more time trying to figure out how your onboarding workflow needs to be, and at the end of the journey, you'll find out that it's still not right. And then you'll have to go back to the drawing board, recycle, refactor your whole process. And it just frustrates everybody. If you can't provide a consistent, user experience for application onboarding, they will chase you out of the room. And it's been really, really awesome working with Edgile as well as our business partners at SailPoint to really expand the capabilities and connectors. We've worked with various other businesses and other lines of business in our company that have made the SailPoint identity transformation a lot easier for us.
Thank you, Chris. So I think both Dilip and Chris, you have not mentioned about RBAC, and we know that that's and you, yeah, and it's like you're 2+ years into the program, right? So what's your view on RBAC? If you can share that.
I think RBAC, I would say it's still, as I said, it's a white elephant in the room. Like, we do acknowledge that, but I'm not really solving that problem as of today. Because when we moved some of those applications from our legacy, we did had some kind of an RBAC in the past. We brought them over, like supply chain, in our supply chain has their own roles, and then we had some roles coming from our CX or customer support organization. But of course, after coming to SailPoint, we stopped the cloning functionality. And that's on a purpose. We really don't want to, because that's what we want business to see. Maybe we're trying to make, I don't know, if the strategy, I would say, because we know the cloning is not really the best security practice. Now, after we stop cloning, now business is reaching out to me, hey, they escalate me. I think that, you believe me, they escalate me almost every week, saying that, hey, your tool sucks, you're not really helping us, blah, blah. I mean, they use all kind of words, okay. Right? So, but at the end of the day, we said, no, we're not, these are some of the things I said, we draw a line that, hey, we're not going to make some of these things, the practice is what we had, we don't want to bring them over here, right? So, that is forcing the business to now to think about how do we bring new roles. So that's one thing. And then number two is, one of the other problem we are also starting to solve is, especially now, role explosion. Of course, we did have some roles, but we ended up exploding those roles, because a role multiplied by geographic locations, right? So we're trying to solve that problem, not just within SailPoint. We're trying to bring some attribute-based or policy-based access control along with the SailPoint. We started working with Plain ID. So that's one way of you're trying to address that. Though we're calling this an RBAC, but it's a role, but in the backend, role plus an attribute is going to help us to redefine those roles for some of our organizations. Yeah.
I think that's a very interesting point, because we have heard for long that RBAC will go, PBAC will be the thing of future, right? And we have seen PBAC adoption lately in last couple of years. I have seen personally a lot of organizations, large organizations like Cisco adopting it. So I think both will stay, and it's one is more runtime, the other one is more static, but I think both will stay. Chris, what's your opinion?
Yeah, RBAC is something that we're all intimately familiar with, and it means something different. If you go ask your executive team, they think it's, oh, well, on day one, they get this right access, and they only have that access, but they've been here for 40 years, and you find out that they have far more access, and that would be a role. Well, this person left, and their replacement needs the same access, and cloning is not great, but it's at the dichotomy of trying to be expedient for the end user. So where our end users and our customers get frustrated is because they expect that day one that they have the access at the time that they need to be able to do their job. And the minute that it is not there, they panic and you get escalations. So for us, we've actually been leaning into a lot of the AI access insights with Identity Now. And we're actually working on getting access modeling in place to be able to help facilitate the math that we did this morning, where Matt Mills was talking about 2 million identities and 10,000 different roles and all these different entitlements, and you can fall into the analysis by paralysis and really just think that every single thing needs to be RBAC'd. And in reality, you really need to understand what are they trying to access and how can I enable that at the time they need to request it. So one of the things that we've found really successful with our Identity Now rollout is kind of using the entitlement manager or request center as a just-in-time provisioning. And they talked this morning about convergence between PAM and least privilege, just-in-time, policy. All of those things are all coming together. And what's been really helpful with our implementation of SailPoint Identity Now is really being able to understand how to enable the business so they don't get prickly when they don't have that access right away. We say, hey, go to Identity Now, go request it. It'll get provisioned in minutes, seconds, if your manager clicks the approval link. Instead of having us have to figure out, okay, well, they got an approval via somebody else because their manager was out on vacation. We had to track it with the ticket. The ticket was an email that came in from so-and-so, and it makes it really hard. So for us, we've really leaned into understanding how to look at the use cases within the applications and use our data within SailPoint as the vehicle for explaining to the business what roles really are. If you ask any of your application owners what a role is, they will completely tell you a different answer. And so we, from the Identity and Access Management team, have the experience and the technologies to be able to advocate and tell them and inform them that it's not so scary using a different tool. So that's really been our back journey, and we're actually very excited to see all of the capabilities that are coming out of Identity Now. And the machine learning and access insights will be super helpful in us providing recommendations going forward.
Thank you. Thanks,
Great.
Chris.
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, RBAC, the four-letter word. Can anyone relate, right? But roles, as you guys are adding on more and more applications, become even more important to really help make your identity system more efficient, right? As you're providing access. So as a user goes in, I can request a role and not have to figure out entitlements or what access do I need. When you're doing certification, same thing. You're certifying a role and not many lines of entitlements. We've developed an RBAC accelerator. John Thornton here that works for Edgile will be doing a session on it tomorrow morning at 8:32, not 8:30, but 8:32. And what's great about this is it talks about it's a new approach to not top down or bottom up, as we've all heard over the years. It's a new approach to doing that with the tool that we've developed. And now with SailPoint's tooling, we're able to maintain those roles. And that was really the hard part. You create a role, it goes stale. So encourage you all to come hear that tomorrow. All right, we will move on. We are all in identity. These projects are very hard, very complex. We all have scar tissue, but yet we love it, right? Would love to hear a little bit more about what are the best practices and lessons learned from your programs.
Yeah, I touched on this earlier, but like I said, identity isn't difficult. The people you can work with can be somewhat difficult, but the idea of making sure that you're willing to cross the aisle and work with your stakeholders. For me, I found it to be infinitely more successful when you partner with somebody, you partner with your internal audit group, you educate them on identity security, and you don't just say, this is how it's got to be. Because as soon as you dig your heels in and you don't understand their perspective, they won't want to go on the identity journey with you. And it's not a project, it's a program. And that's one of my key tenets in how I manage our different activities, our roadmaps, our sprints. I manage the expectations of our stakeholders and executives. And it's really important to get their buy-in and support. And if you can put it in simple, easy terms for them to understand why we're doing what we're doing. They talked about this morning about, a Salesforce recertification campaign or entitlement, and it's this cryptographic string of letters and numbers, and it only means something to one person, probably in the organization, the Salesforce administrator. But actually putting a business-friendly description has made it super helpful for us. And I was happy to hear that SailPoint's continuing to expand that, because that's a capability that we've been adopting kind of prior to that AI ML stuff that they're baking into their product. But it's making it easier for our customers, again, to use a product that they are not interested in using from the ground up. You know, they're so used to it being email approval or, you know, clone somebody's access because it's easier. Now you're enabling them to say, this is what this access does. This is what this access means. And you can enable the business through kind of a least privileged mentality. So it flips the cards a little bit in the sense of allowing the business to understand your requirements. So for us, from a best practices perspective and lessons learned, don't refactor your business processes. It's better to just start from scratch, but invite your colleagues across the aisle to understand their process. Invite your audit committee. No one really wants to sit in an audit meeting. Trust me, I've been there. But it's really important. If you can get them to understand where your gaps and your weaknesses are, and you can become friends with them, trust me, then you won't get those nagging escalations when something gets found in an audit or whatever. So for us, being able to kind of adhere to those compliance regulations, being in the healthcare industry and, you know, technology space, we have a lot of regulations, a lot of customer data, a lot of things that we need to protect. So for us, we need to make sure that we have a common lexicon and a framework and security best practices baked into our identity fabric.
Thank you. So, Dilip, you want to add?
Let's do a time check. Like, okay. So yeah, so in terms of like, if you ask me like, what did I learn and the best practices, I mean, I would say like these are some of the practices we figured out course of the journey. So number one, like I can definitely think back, and it's about the expectations, like really setting the expectation, at least like defining the expectations. When we started our journey, like we were like super aggressive all the way from top down. We thought like we'll achieve these milestones. So there was one challenge, like, hey, how do we really gauge and understand what you can deliver? And at the end of the day, like, I think the reason I'm going back on expectation is like the minute you start showing a value coming out of your program, and then that not only helps your own team, because your team can get the sense of accomplishment. Yes, we're accomplishing these things on every monthly basis. That motivates the team to deliver more, and that also goes back and gives you a story to tell to your stakeholders. Hey, we achieved these things on a certain regular basis, and that's number one. Like setting expectation, and then across the board, making sure that your team. You have to make your team feel better, like that they're delivering something, right? And they're valuing some value, giving value back to the business. So number two is about knowing what is the art of possibility here. Like at least, like because like we coming back from a homegrown solution, like everything was possible for us back then. But when it came to SailPoint, now we had to confine within that box, and upfront we had to let our stakeholders know, hey, this is possible, this is not possible. Some things are up for negotiation, some things are not. So because we don't want to go in the rabbit hole of negotiating on things which is not possible, and then we waste our time on figuring out how do we achieve this, right? So I think upfront setting them, because we have to let them know that yeah, we are experts in this area. Like, and that's the confidence we have to take. Say, hey, we know what we are doing. We know these apps. We are identity experts here. At the same time, respectfully, like not to disrespect any of those applications, right? So I think that is very important, like upfront, and I start seeing that my stakeholders are appreciating that when we upfront tell them this is possible, this is not possible, because we're not wasting their time, we're not wasting our time. So we're moving fast, quickly from the discovery, we're closing the discovery, quickly going into our engineering cycles, and then delivering the capability. So they're seeing a value out of that, coming out of that. So that's number two of what we learned. I think that's what I would highly recommend for anyone, my co-practitioners here. Like number three is capacity of the teams. Like, and this is something which I really struggled in my initial days. The capacity was very fluctuating in terms of like either my employees or my partners' capacity, right? Because like, and that is driven by the budgets what I had. Like sometimes like the business will come back and say, hey, Dilip, I'll fund you for something like this. Can you do this for me, right? So initially I used to take that bait, but later I realized that's a bait. It's not really helping me of taking those cross charges or cross fundings or whatever you're right. So rather I said, I'm not going to take that. Like rather I went to our CISO and said, hey, you fund us for next 8 quarters, right? For next 8 quarters, I know what is the capacity of this team. And with this capacity, I know what I can plan for what we can deliver. And we start delivering based on what we committed. So like, that resonates really well and brings the confidence on the team and the program, even at the executive level, at my stakeholder level. I think, and then also that helped me, my team internally, like coming back, like my team can say, yes, you know what, once they start delivering what they committed, they feel happy about it, right? So everyone is, it's more of happy, like across the board. So I would say that is my third best practice, yeah.
Thank you.
So quickly, I know in the interest of time, if you both can, talk about the business benefits that you have gained till date and your future plans because as you both said, this is a journey, how you want to take that forward.
Right.
Yeah, so my top three kind of key takeaways and things that I've done is automate the low-hanging fruit. We automated and started with our JML processes with Identity Now, and my team was the ones managing all the tickets, and we've seen an 86% reduction in tickets, which has allowed us to redeploy our engineering and analysts to support the role-based access controls and modernize and transform our identity platform. So that's been super helpful. The second thing that's really been kind of a key tenet in our success is looking at, again, modernizing and partnering with the various teams to be successful. We know that we couldn't be successful without a partner. Edgile has been super helpful in working with our colleagues, and hearing it from an external is sometimes a lot easier than you fighting with your internal resources and teams. So having a partner engaged to help you in your identity journey has been super helpful in us and has accelerated our adoption. And then lastly is centralizing our AAM services. Being that we were very fragmented and we're still growing and scaling, we've got a lot of growing pains. And for us, it was being able to kind of start showcasing the capabilities through automation and scale with Identity Now, and that has made it a lot easier for us to sell the services. It makes sense for us to do access management. It makes sense for us to do recertifications and to be able to provide that evidence and support going forward.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I'll go for the top two. There are many, but again, in the interest of time, I limited to this. So number one, so we brought in close to 800 plus applications on IAQ, including all of our 90 plus SOX applications. And then also we are able to decommission some of the homegrown apps, consolidate them into the new platform. As a byproduct of that, we're also bringing some acquisition companies, the companies we acquired. Earlier, they used to run on their own identity stack. Now, because we got a common product, so we are able to bring them on into enterprise platform. So that's number one. The overall, bringing at an enterprise scale, consolidating multiple IAM entities into one single platform, and we're providing a single pane of glass for us to as to see who got access to what. I mean, that's what we're working towards. That's the first gain. The second one is it's more of for me and my team. In the past, when we had these multiple homegrown apps, there's always a risk of IP. If I lose one of my employee, it takes 6 months for me to bring someone and then ramp them up and to bring that level. Now coming to product like SailPoint, it gave me because now that skill is more of a commodity. I mean, I do appreciate it doesn't take a good engineers to be on our team, but still I'm still not looking at 6 months of ramp up time for a resource. We're talking about a couple of weeks, maybe 6 weeks, right? But also that gives me ability to also expand some of my workload to the partners. If I had to really scale, I can quickly say, hey, I can call Ashish and say, Ashish, I need a scrum team here. Just boom, go and deploy a screen there. And then we'll start taking up those additional backlogs into the team. So we're able to scale quickly. We're able to, we build a more of a resiliency in the team. So once then we can really commit what are we going to do for next 2 years. So that's, I see how did we, number one, getting the value out of the whole program, and the two, how we're also building a service that is resilient and that can deliver.
Thank you. Well, this has been a lot of really great information. There's a lot of takeaways, but if we had to summarize three, one is getting your stakeholder approval and buy-in, and continuously showcasing the business value that we are delivering, every day as a part of these projects to continue to build that credibility. You want your funding to continue. So if you want the funding to continue, you got to drive that business value. Second, you've heard a lot of Chris and Dilip talk about application teams. It can be very challenging to work with, right? So it's either setting or resetting the expectations of what's the state of the possible, and then really setting up a process for the application onboarding and starting that factory process as well. And then last but not least, Chris said it when we were practicing yesterday, it's a program, not a project. It is not next, finished. You're doing it today, you're going to continue to automate, and that program needs a plan, and it needs to be refreshed every year or so. So that's in summary what we wanted to share with you guys today. I want to specifically thank Chris and Dilip for all the great info and how successful you've been on your journeys, and would love to open it up to any questions. Yes, sir.
Okay. So the okay, so like, yeah, I think that's an interesting one. That's where we kind of did a trick. Like, so in the first year of our migration, like we kind of brought on all applications as a UI on the front end side into SailPoint very quickly. Like within 2 months, we brought them all, and in the back end, like still in the back end, the integration was happening through our homegrown apps, and then we started changing the back end in the later part of the journey. So at least like we don't want to have like users go through this whole two parallel systems for years together. Rather than we said, hey, within 2 months, everyone is going to come over here. So we try to reduce that. Of course, like once they came to SailPoint, that's a different dance. Like we are right. So, but yes, so that's how we kind of manage that.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so my other one is how fast and how many audit findings we close, because those get reported to our audit committee. So that's one capture. We also work with our application owners to kind of capture how many access entitlements that IDN has captured. And right now we're 3,000 entitlements requests that have been granted through Identity Now. So that's been super helpful. We kind of advocate and say, like, look, this is, 55%, I think, is our number, less the amount of emails you're getting about an email approval for some specific ask. And the other one is our recertification campaigns. So we look at our success rate and how frequent, being in a pretty regulated, highly regulated area, we have specific requirements for high trust, FedRAMP, et cetera, et cetera. So we actually report back how many certification campaigns, and right now we've standardized 12 of our certification campaigns and automated them, but the overall number of how many people have accepted and how frequent they happen is like multi-factor of about 10. So we have a lot of different campaigns and how they get run. So we report kind of a full gamut on recertification, lifecycle management, access requests. We also have password management as another cool, exciting feature that we're able to kind of track how many passwords are getting reset for our acquisitions. So it's been helpful in that regard.
Delete.
Yeah, I think like pretty much like Chris, how he mentioned, like one thing which I would also just to add on that what Chris mentioned is like it was a certification, the efficiency of certification, so like what we used to capture, and when we moved to SailPoint, we kind of changed the business rules around certifications. And that brought down the number of emails going out, the number of certifications, and the efficiency, like how many people are really acting on that. I think that is a big improvement what we saw. That was something that we also started showcasing to our leaders. Yeah. How many certifications? Like, I don't know how much time we have, but the long story short, like what we do, like we kind of had only two, as of today, we only standardize certification to two models. Like one is your privilege certification that runs for every 3 months. And then like we say, hey, compliance, like including everything, like annual certification, right? So we kind of, in the past, we used to have multiple models. Like we kind of, after coming to SailPoint, we standardize, like there are 2 certification models. When the application is getting onboarded, like we'll decide, hey, which certification you'll fall into, and then we'll, yeah. Yeah.
Any other questions?
Oh,
Did we receive any OCM help, or how did we handle with all these communications? As people aspect is
Okay. You want to take that up?
Yeah, so for us, that was kind of the beauty of having a partner be along the journey. They've been able to kind of help make the OCM a little bit easier. We've also gone on a series of different lunch and learns to be able to kind of educate the business and other leaders in our company, which has been helpful. So we've taken both a kind of a top-down approach and a little bit of a bottom-up approach to really drive that it's not just this is how it has to be. It's really letting them understand that this needs to happen in a certain way, but that they're included in the journey. So, and having a partner is immensely helpful. I mean, you'll spend a lot of cycles trying to do OCM yourself, and for us, it was helpful to have Edgile as well as have SailPoint help us in that journey for OCM.
So in our case, like I would say, I mean, we are a very IT company, right? Like so it's, you can understand like everything is very dynamic in terms of like, so the OCM part was also like we did conduct webinars like we did in for different personas, and we started inviting people to those webinars. So that was a program that we ran for 4+ months. So went through standard communication models, webinars, and then office hours, so on and so forth. All right, and we also worked with, but is it still enough? But I think like end of the day, we felt like it's still not enough. We did with the capacity what we had. Given a choice, like, can I go back and redo this whole thing again? Yes, I think we'll definitely redo that again. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you all for coming.
Thank you very much.